Sorry, can I just get clarity? I was told I had 7 minutes there. Just doesn't matter. I'm sure you'll be fair. Thank you very much, Laska Hirlock. I very much support this bill, and I feel very strongly about this bill. And I want to congratulate Deputy Brazel on all the work he's done. I've seen the work he's done first-hand in committee. I've worked with him closely on some aspects of how we need to go with orphan drugs, and certainly I would go as far. I feel very strongly about this bill, and I would go as far as to say that, as I said to Deputy Brazel before, that if he wasn't able to get this bill through, I was even going to look at putting some Labour time or co-signing it to help him if needs be, because I feel that strongly about this bill. This is absolutely necessary. We have to change our proposition and what we're doing in relation to orphan drugs, Minister, and we have to do so very quickly, because if we don't, we're going to be letting down people all over the country. We were the only party who actually put forward a separate ring-fence budget in our budgetary proposals for the last budget in relation to orphan drugs, and the requirement for extra funding and for it to be actually distinguished and separate. The 2013 Act, while progressive at the time, is limited. And that's because this issue is moving so quickly. It's moving all the time. We are getting to the stage, Minister, now where drugs are going to be customised towards the individual patient. And I'll get on to other issues relating to that, specifically to do with genetics later. But that's where we're going. So our legislation and our protocols need to change, and change rapidly, to reflect this dynamic situation. Where you have drugs that can affect less than 100 people, the process of that drug getting through a HTA process as currently identified, in fairness to Professor Michael Barry, he admitted straight up it was never going to meet the thresholds. Never going to meet them. And that goes for a whole range of different potential drugs. So we obviously have a serious problem that needs to be changed. And we need to get to a proposal that we find out whether drugs are worth it from a medical point of view, rather than just from a cost or a return, whether they are worth it for the people. And in many cases, we cannot get to that because there isn't enough capacity to generate data to be able to analyse it, because we're not getting them through in the first place. So it's a chicken and egg scenario. And that is a big problem. We have huge delays in relation to the amount of orphan drugs that are being approved here in Ireland compared to other countries and how they're being reimbursed. The process here in Ireland is much slower than most of our European neighbours. When it comes to the HTA process, it's not just about cost effectiveness or affordability, but other issues have to come into play. Equity of access, prioritisation, the severity of the condition, all of these issues, the type of people, the demographics of the people that are affected. These are all issues that need to be taken on board in relation to the decision-making process that has to be at play. And I recognise the decision by the government to create the National Rare Disease Plan for Ireland and the positives that have come out of that. I recognise the decision in relation to the agreement from the Benelux agreement. Although I haven't seen much progress on it, or impacts from it, I do recognise that these were both positive developments. But this is such a moving issue. This is such a changing area. We do need to act a lot more quickly. I want to see us going to multi-annual budgets for orphan drugs, so that we can plan ahead in relation to the process by which we will do approval. It needs to be ring-fenced, as other speakers have said. We did a lot of work in the Health Committee in relation to a report on orphan drugs. And I have to say, following on from hearing from the Department and the HSE in relation to our report, I wasn't overly impressed, because I'm not sure that the impact of what we were saying, or the emphasis of the areas of concern we had, was fully taken on board. There are a few issues that do need to be dealt with, and dealt with very quickly. There are issues in relation to clinical trials and how clinical trials are managed. The Minister made reference to Marion Kelly, my neighbour, one of 2 Alpha-1 patients who died because of a clinical trial that basically stopped. And there are concerns in relation to the provision of Respreza again. But that should never happen, Minister. The issues around the communications and that were so disastrous, and they were disastrous up until very recently. And Deputy Brazel and others in this room are well aware of that too. That should never happen. We shouldn't have a scenario where families are not being communicated with in relation to this. We shouldn't have a scenario where the HSE there is no decision in relation to how drugs are being administered or how people are being looked after. That should never happen. Communication was atrocious, and atrocious in relation to how the families and the support groups were dealt with. I also want to bring up the whole area of immunotherapy, because when we get to the future of drug provision, immunotherapy and moving into the whole area of immunotherapy is going to be critical. And orphan drugs obviously are going to be, there's going to be more of them, and they're going to be there to provide greater benefits. But I do have a serious concern in relation to how we're going to be able to provide these drugs and make decisions if we don't build up our capacity for genetic diagnosis. I mean, we had the issue up in Crumlin Hospital recently. That should be a warning to all of us. That should be a warning to every one of us in here, because our capacity in relation to genetic analysis is nowhere near what it should be. And for many of the drugs that will be required to come onto market and for the analysis, we need greater genetic services, we're going to need more consultant geneticists, genetic counsellors, genetic testing facilities, and while we're waiting for all of them, waiting lists are going to grow. Decisions in relation to drugs are going to be put off, and we're not going to be able to do the best for the people that we need to. So I have a real issue here, Minister, which I would like you to take back on the whole area of not just the protocols around and budget provision around orphan drugs, but also the process by which we're going to customise our decision-making into the future, and how we can do that without the genetic services that we need in the first place being available. Minister, it's quite obvious that we cannot continue the way we are at the moment in relation to all the provision of all the drugs that have many people have spoken about inside here, and the continuous lobbying that happens, and I can't blame one single person for doing it. They are absolutely right. They're passionate about this. This is family members, friends, consistency inside in the AV room, outside the gates, lobbying, etc. But let's get rid of one myth. There's a myth outside here that, in some way, that the process by which drugs, the decision on drugs, is purely a HSE NCPE process. It is not. There is, and I tested this in committee, there is the capacity of the Minister to bypass that. And that did happen in relation to Orkambi. And it can happen at any other time, because it happened in relation to Pembroke, in relation to the 221 women. So let's get rid of this myth. And I saw an article this Sunday in the Sunday Business Post by Professor Michael Barry, where he spoke about political interference. The largest amount of political interference in relation to going around the process for assigning drugs in this country, it was actually done by the government, Orkambi and Pembroke. And let me be very clear about that. Right? We all argue in favour of certain drugs, but in scenarios like that, we've had decisions made by the government. So it isn't exclusively just through the HSE and the NCPE. The government can go around it, and it's in there in the agreement with the IPHA. And the final thing, which is critically important, Lascar Concorla, is this. When we made the decision, when the government made the decision to assign Pembroke for Vicky Phelan, and I have, with the support of other colleagues inside this House, been raising this issue on numerous occasions. We cannot have a scenario where Anya Morgan, Tracy Brennan, who are looking at me here tonight now, speaking to you, who are waiting to go on Pembroke. We cannot have a situation where Vicky Phelan is getting this for free and they are waiting for it. You cannot treat two women differently. The Minister has made on 3 occasions public commitments that this is going to be sorted. This is the Christmas present they want. I implore you, I urge you, please make sure the Minister gives them their Christmas wish. They deserve it. Other women with cervical cancer stage 4 deserve it. You cannot treat them differently to Vicky Phelan. Vicky Phelan has campaigned for this herself. I know, I speak to her all the time in it. We really, really need this done, Minister. It is completely unfair and it has to end, and they have to be given access to this free of charge immediately. 2 sets of women cannot legally be treated this way in this country. Thank you.